The whole point of this section of the text is Israel has gotten so far. This is quite a journey we've been tracking with them over the course of slavery in Egypt and the miraculous deliverance that God provides for them as he crushes Egypt and their gods with the plagues, sets them free in the miracles of the Exodus and the parting of the Red Sea. They cross on dry ground, and they get now over right at the border of the promised land. It's called the promised land because it's the land that God promised to give to his people. That he said to Abraham back in Genesis 12, Genesis 15, this great promise of, I'm going to start a new nation. They'll be mine, my possession in the world. I'll be their God, they'll be my people. And I'm going to use them to bless the whole world. That's this promise of the Messiah to come, because through the nation of Israel, in the promised Messiah, Jesus Christ, the world can now indeed be blessed. And we've watched that in the book of Acts. We've only got 2 more Sundays left in the book of Acts as we kind of complete that journey as the gospel goes out of Jerusalem and out of Israel into the nations, to the Gentiles, the Greek word ethnos, the ethnic groups in the world. So all of that promise from Genesis 12 comes to fruition in the book of Acts and is still happening to this day. You're here. You're part of the nations. In fact, you're part of a nation that didn't even exist back then. That's how God works, and that's how powerful he is to get his gospel, not just to the nations, but even to ones that didn't exist at the time. It's how faithful he is to his promises. But part of that promise, as he made to Abraham, is walk around this area because this is the land I'm giving to you, to your descendants. It's not just that there's a national group coming in a country. It's this particular plot of land. That is quite in front of our faces due to what's happening right now in that very plot of land. But this eternally has belonged since Genesis. This is theirs, and it will always be theirs. So God makes this promise, this is your land. So they get to the edge. So close. I mean, they can see it. And they send over some spies to check out the land. It's good military protocol. God has already said he will drive out the nations because it's inhabited. It's the land of Canaan. It's inhabited by the Canaanites. There are multiple people groups within the Canaanites. They are all utterly wicked. They are pagan to the core. They are not innocent. And God orders his people to march in and kill them all. Kick them out. This is my land that belongs to my people. They are not going to have this at all. So, verse 3 let's start in verse 2. Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their fathers' tribes, everyone a leader among them. So 12 men on behalf of the 12 tribes gets sent into the promised land, into Canaan. Their names are recorded here. We know who they are, and that list of names will become an act of judgment against them here in the days to come for their lack of faith. And Moses sends them. Verse 17, Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan. Instead of them, go up there into the Negev, then go up into the hill country. See what the land is like, whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many. And how is the land in which they live? Is it good or bad? How are the cities in which they live? Are they like open camps or with fortifications? How is the land? Is it fat or lean? Are there trees in it or not? Make an effort then to get some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. So they send out this group of 12 into the land, again, on a recon mission. We need to know what we're getting ourselves into. God has promised he'll give it to us, yes. But that doesn't mean we don't prepare. So we go and we prepare. So tell me about the people. Are there a lot of them? Are we just going to walk in and say boo and take over? How are the battles going to be? Are their cities fortified? Do they have walls around them? Are there military camps? Is it just an open camp? We're just going to walk in, kick over the campfire, and say, well, this is mine now. How is this going to go? God promised that this land is flowing with milk and honey. Not literally, that's weird. It's a metaphorical way to understand the abundance of this land. It is a good and prosperous and wonderful land. Go check things out. What's the food like? Again, when you visit a new city, this is what you ask. What's the food situation here? So they're going into this land. So how are we going to be able to eat well? They've just spent a long time getting up to this point. They want to make sure there's good food. There was in Egypt. There hasn't been necessarily up to this point. It's been okay. God's been faithful and provided it for them for sure. But they want to cover this. Are there going to be good food? Verse 23. They came out to the valley of Eshcol and from there cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes. And they carried it on a pole between two men with some of the pomegranates and the figs. Their place was called the Valley of Eshcol because the cluster which the sons of Israel cut down from there. So, I don't know about you, I've never seen a cluster of grapes that you had to carry on a pole. This is how I hold them from the grocery store. Small, insignificant, delicious for sure. Actually, I don't really like grapes. They're the filler in a fruit cup. We all know it. That's so the restaurants don't have to give the better, more expensive things like pineapple and strawberries. That's why everybody orders a fruit cup. The grapes are just to fill up the volume of the cup. We all know it, and if you disagree, we can talk later and I'll correct you. So, this is obviously very quickly where it is confirmed this is an abundant and fruitful land. So they check things out. Verse 25. Then they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days and went and came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Now you can imagine the importance of this moment, right? The whole nation, a couple million of them have gathered together. They're ready. They're excited. God's faithfully brought them to this point. Go check things out. They're ready for them to come back and go, oh, this is a piece of cake. So much so, here's a piece of cake. This is how good the land is. This is wonderful. This is going to be easy for us. God has been so true and faithful. Verse 27 of Numbers 13. Thus they recounted to him and said, we went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Good news. God didn't lie to us. This is a good place to be. Verse 28, nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Now, Anak is the land of the giants. So the Anakim that are referred to later, this is not good. Not only are there a lot of people, there are big ones there. Verse 29, Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan. So it's occupied. They're everywhere. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we are surely able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land which we have passed through to spy out on is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. There also we saw the Nephilim. The sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim, and we became like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. On the one hand, we understand the response. This is going to be hard. It feels overwhelming. There's a lot of them, and they're big, and they're strong. Their militaries seem capable. But then there's Caleb. Joshua will speak up later, and the two of them give good reports. No. We should go. Caleb's very clear. We should go. We should take possession. We're surely able to overcome it. Now, why does Caleb say that? Does he say we can overcome this because we're so great? We're mightier than they are? We're stronger than they are? No. God said it's ours. So we can go and take it. But the people respond, they're too strong. We can't. And to be honest with you, they're probably right. We can't. If we go up nation against nation and go after them, they're going to defeat us. And they give out the details. It devours, verse 32. The land devours its inhabitants. All the people we saw are men of great size. Now that's a fabrication. Not everybody's a giant. Everybody's huge over there. We saw the Nephilim. That goes all the way back to Genesis 6. Angels come down and they start intermarrying and producing offspring with human women, and it produces this race of giants. So the Anakim are part of the Nephilim. So these are legitimately giant, strong, superhuman men. And we don't want anything to do with that. They're going to take us out. Verse 33, we became like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. We're peons. I mean, we're a bug that they're just going to step on and crush. There's no way we can fight against them. Understandable to have that reaction, but what they're doing is devastating, because these are supposed to be the people who believe God. These are supposed to be the people who are people of faith. They spread this report, chapter 14, verse 1. All the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. I would too. So would you. So close. Then we get to this, and it's disappointing. God has let us down. This isn't going to be easy. This is going to be harder than we thought. All the sons of Israel, verse 2, grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, so this is now the nation responding, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. This is total anarchy at this point. This is active rebellion. It's not just that we're afraid. Now they blame God. Look at what God has done. He brought us here to kill us. Now they've already said this before. Remember, as soon as they get out of Egypt, pretty much the next day, well, what about food? What about all the good things we had there? We should go back. Into slavery. That was pretty great. Do you remember that? We used to sit there as slaves after our long day, but boy, we had meat in the pot. That was excellent. There were all these spices. The food was delicious. We should go back as slaves. We had it better than in freedom here in this place. So Yahweh's at fault. And then they falsely use their family as an excuse. Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. This is dangerous for my family, so I'm not going to do this now. We should go back to Egypt, to the point where they have a plan. Let's get Moses out of the way. The only way to do that is to kill him. Let's kill Moses. Let's kill Aaron. Let's go back. So isn't that interesting? Let's go back to Egypt. What's left in Egypt? Nothing. God destroyed it all. The whole system that they were under, that they decided was good, the whole system is gone. Let's go back to the good old days. Not that they were good. We were in slavery, but let's go back. It was so wonderful, even though you can't even go back to that. It's something else entirely. Now, God had already miraculously granted to them favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and now they've been set free. Do you think if they went back, the Egyptians are going to show them that same favor? I doubt it. I don't think that would go very well. Verse 5. Moses and Aaron fell on their face in the presence of all the assembly of the congregation of the sons of Israel, Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. But as for you, only do not rebel against Yahweh, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has been removed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them. Now that is a great message. They're our bread. We're going to eat them for lunch. They've been given to us. God has removed their protection. They got nothing. God is with us. The God of the universe is our God, the one who, remember, not that long ago, blew Egypt off the face of the earth. You remember that? That God is with us in physical form. The pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire, like we can see him. Remember when we were at Sinai? And we were all scared to death because the mountain started shaking and the cloud and the lightning and the thunder, and we said, don't let God speak to us, we're too afraid. Remember that? That God is with us right now. Why would we not go and do that? Don't fear them. But all the congregation, verse 10, said to stone them with stones. And then the glory of Yahweh appeared in the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. That's probably a terrifying moment. They're rebelling, ready to kill the leaders because they trust God. As soon as they do, that whole physical presence of God shows up in that precise moment. It's like when you're in trouble and you hear Dad pull in the driveway. Like, I'm gonna die tonight. This is my last day on earth. He's gonna kill us all. And God shows up. Verse 11, Yahweh said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? How long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have done in their midst? Yes. How long should I put up with these people after all that I've done, after all that I've said, after all that they've seen? They still don't believe. Which is why, for those to this day who say, if I could just see with my own eyes what they saw, I would believe. No, you wouldn't. No. Because all these people who saw this with their own eyes still didn't believe. One of the most shocking statements in all the Bible to me is after Jesus raises from the dead in Matthew 28, and he appears to all the disciples right before he gives the Great Commission, that he's risen from the dead, standing there with them in physical presence, and it says, and some doubted. What? Like, you can touch him. I just don't know if you're real. He is, after all that they've seen, personally experienced. No, you still won't believe. So God has a plan too. Verse 12, I'll strike them with pestilence and dispossess them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. This has already happened before. God is so sick of Israel I'm going to kill them all. We're going to wipe them out. Moses, I'll start over with you. I mean, this already happened in the flood. It's already happened post Exodus. It happened on Mount Sinai with the whole golden calf thing down at the base of the mountain. And Moses is up at top getting the 10 Commandments. And God says, you should probably go down there and fix that. I'm going to kill them all. And we'll just start fresh. Brand new day. And so now he does it again. I'm not going to put up with them. But it's Moses who will defend them, who will stand in between God and his wrath, his just wrath, and the sinners of Israel. And he will stand in that place and say, don't do this. And appeals to God, what will the world think? And now it says, okay, that's fine. Verse 18, Yahweh is slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. He'll by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. Verse 19, pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, according to the greatness of your loving kindness, just as you also have forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. God, these are your people that you love. Forgive them. And he does. Yet again, they continue to complain, and on it goes. They are convicted by the fact they haven't believed God. And they say, all right, wait a minute. We were wrong. Let's go. We'll go up to the land. And God says, no. If you go to that land, they will defeat you. You blew it. There are now consequences to your lack of faith. And they try towards the end of the chapter, and they are defeated. And then they are condemned to live in that wilderness for the next 40 years. They will wander over the course of 4 decades until the unfaithful generation dies in the desert. You can do the math. You can do that later. A couple million people have to die over 40 years. You can get out your calculator later and figure out how many people have to die every single day for 40 years to get to that point. It's hundreds every single day as a consequence for their lack of faith. And then from this point on in the storyline, we will walk with them for the next 40 years in the wilderness before they come back to the promised land again. Moses himself doesn't get to go into the promised land. He will prove to be ungrateful and unfaithful to the Lord over those 40 years and not do what God told him to do. He will respond in anger, and he'll beat a rock with his staff when God told him to speak to it, and it will gush forth water, but Moses will go up on a mountain, and God will show him the promised land, and then God will take his life there on that mountain, and he doesn't get to step foot into the promised land. And of that whole generation, 2 of them get to go into the promised land. Caleb and Joshua. The 2 who gave the good report and said, no, we trust God. We believe him. There's obviously some salvation stuff going on there, right? Who is it that gets to go into the eternal promised land? It's believers. It's those who have faith. It's those who say, no, this is what God has said. And I believe him. I trust him. This is how we live to this very day. This is a microcosm of life as a whole. God has made promises. Do you believe them or not? Because there are some days, aren't there? It feels overwhelming. There are some days and some situations you face where it would seem as if God lied. I just don't see how this is going to go down. And you have a choice to make. In that moment, will you believe the God who makes promises? Or will you rebel against the God who makes promises? There are consequences for either of those decisions. And you can choose to rebel, and death is what you get. Or you can believe. even when everything in front of you would tell you this isn't going to work. When that diagnosis hits, when you get that phone call that whatever's happened or so-and-so has died, you fill in the blank. When you have that job loss, that financial issue, again, whatever it might be that you have to endure, in that moment, will you believe or will you reject? Are you going to trust that he's going to do what he promised he would do? That he who began a good work in you, Paul says, will carry it on to completion the day of Christ Jesus. He's going to do this. Romans 8, verse 28, that he will take this and he will use it for your good. He is using even this wicked, evil, nasty, broken, horrific thing. That God is even using this for his glory and your good in the world to accomplish his will. Do you believe that? When all evidence is to the contrary. It'd be nice, wouldn't it, that when you become a Christian, whatever you go through before you become a Christian, to get to that point and you trust in the gospel and you've converted and now you're forgiven of your sin and God, the Holy Spirit, dwells within and your eyes are open to what the Bible means and what it says, and you have the hope of eternal life. All these wonderful, inspiring things that we believe and hold on to. Wouldn't it be nice from that point on if life was easy? Wouldn't that be cool? That you wouldn't have another problem after that? That nobody would say anything stupid or mean, and everything that you touch would turn to gold, and everybody's wealthy beyond imagination, and nothing ever breaks at your house, and you never get a flat tire, and your kids never get sick, and everybody lives to be at least 100, and the world would go, oh man, look at those Christians. Their lives are so perfect. They're so wonderful. I want to be one of those because I want all these things. Wouldn't that be cool? Like I dream about those kinds of things. You don't have any health problems. When you die, you just go to sleep and your eyes open and Jesus is like, hey, welcome home. Pain-free. Yeah, no issues. Yeah, it's just like that. It's over. You never have to fear what's coming, or you don't really get tired. You sleep because you want to. That'd be amazing. Yeah, all the naps you want. Only have to work a couple hours a week. Again, we can keep going, right? It would be so amazing if the path was just leveled for us. But God in his wisdom hasn't done that. And if you expect that, you're in trouble. You're going to be sorely disappointed. And it's just a matter of time until you do what they did. Until you turn and call your leaders liars who apparently misinformed you. And two, you're going to blame God because you had false expectations of things he never promised, and you demand it. If my life's not easy, I'm out. And you'll rebel. And you'll think that you're justified in doing so. How easy it is when things don't go as we plan. God's plan is better than yours, and it's harder than yours, more challenging than yours, more painful than yours, but better than yours. So what do? We trust. We believe him. Turn over to Hebrews 3. You've got that verse there on your handout. We'll end with Hebrews 3. The author to the Hebrews picks up on this and applies it to believers today. And I can hear the crowd gathering outside the door. Hebrews 3, we'll start in verse 12. See to it, brothers, that there not be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. But encourage one another after day after day, as long as it's still called today, which is, every day, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. While it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me. So it's a quote from the Old Testament. That's what God says to them about the wilderness. Verse 16, for who provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moses? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose corpses fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. Chapter 4, verse 1, therefore, let us fear, lest while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you may seem to have fallen short of it. He's made a promise to enter into the eternal promised land, into rest. That promise is for you. Do not reject. Do not rebel. Do not harden your heart to that promise. Believe him, because he always tells the truth. It's time to go because we got another service in 7 minutes. So 1, 2, 3, go team.